welcome to a new episode of the Diaries of Everything Ching. Make sure you have your beverage, whether it's hot, cold, or warm. I do not discriminate. I want to talk to y'all about breakups. And I'm not even talking about relationship breakups because we know that shit is hard. I want to talk to you guys about friendship breakups because nobody talks about that enough. Nobody talks about how difficult it is to invest time in a friend and then everything just goes kaput. Especially if the friend is someone that you're used to talking to all the time. And it just takes like maybe one incident in your mind and all of a sudden everything just goes left. Or sometimes things just change and you're just not even clued in. And it's just like, okay, cool, whatever. Like it's just a season. And then you realize that it's not a season. It's just like, I really have to be okay with not being around someone who I thought was going to be, in my life forever. And a lot of times, no one considers that with your friends, right? Because a lot of times when you think of breakups, it's a relationship. And most times with a relationship, when there's a breakup, there's some kind of dramatic event that happens. So like maybe like cheating, something like that, betrayal of some sort, or somebody is maybe outgrowing the relationship, conversations aren't happening, and then things start to change. You disconnect, and then eventually the writing starts to show up on the wall, and then it's just kind of like, okay, by the way, like I'm off this. But with friends, sometimes it's like that. Sometimes it is like that. Sometimes with friendships, you do have those friends that, all of a sudden talking every day becomes talking maybe like once every 6 months. Then it eventually becomes like once a year. And then like relationships like those, you start to realize that it's fizzling. Sometimes there is a betrayal and it's kind of just like, okay, cool. But I think the worst ones is when you don't really understand why. And nobody really talks about that because everybody likes to act like everyone else is so replaceable. And I'm going to be very honest, we live in a world where relationships that are meant to be selfless have become very selfish because of different events that has happened that is traumatic to us. And oftentimes, it takes communication just to kind of say, hey, XYZ, EFG. But nobody wants to explain themselves. Nobody wants to feel like they're obligated to talk to whomever and explain why maybe they're MIA or explain why they couldn't make it to someone's basketball game or performance or something like that. And I think what's happening is everybody is more focused on, yeah, I'm not doing that, which is fine. Like, of course you need to make sure that you're okay first, but I think people misconstrue communication with the need to explain one's self. And communication is key across the board. It doesn't matter if you are dating somebody. It doesn't matter if this person is your friend. It doesn't matter if this person is a family member. It doesn't matter if this person is an associate. When you decide to build a relationship with one other person, that becomes selfless because not everybody is going to communicate like you. Not everybody is going to understand you through and through. Not everybody is going to be gracious for mad long. Like after a while, it leaves too much room for interpretation. It leaves too much room for assumption. And that is when it's the hardest because it's really hard to gauge where the crack was. And when that happens, it makes the breakup harder. Even though a lot of times that I've seen and that I've experienced, you eventually kind of like reconnect with the person, and then they'll kind of like talk to you and say, hey, well, this is what I was going through at the time, X, Y, and Z. And then depending on what the reason is and kind of where you are in life, you kind of decide, okay, well, that's fine, I understand, let's rebuild, or maybe I'm not in a space where we can be as close, or what have you. But prior to that, you kind of are stuck and you don't know how to move forward, but to move forward. And oftentimes when that happens, especially when it happens with someone that you're really close to, it shuts you off to new friends, because you have to get to know someone all over again. You have to, find that comfort, that safeness, and to be yourself and to be around this person and to do certain things. We've seen so many stories where people will travel with their so-called friends, and they're either coming back in drama or they're not coming back at all, and the people who know what happened refuse to say anything, and these are supposed to be friends. So it's very scary nowadays to even think about potentially making new friends. So when you lose the friends that you have, it's just kind of like, okay, well, I mean, numbers dwindling. Like it's very much giving lone wolf and about like 3 more friends, and it's traumatizing. I don't think anybody really talks about how traumatizing it is, especially when there's no closure, because you can't run somebody down for closure. It's just kind of like you gotta assume that they're doing what's best for them, because at the end of the day, like, you might have thought like, hey, yeah, like, we're good, we're great, and then on their end, it's like they're going through a life change, and maybe whatever that life change is, you just don't fit. And sometimes they're just not in a space where they even want to acknowledge it. They're not in a space where they even want to have a conversation about it, because their mind is made up and they're just going to move accordingly. And so nobody talks about that grieving process, because you still have to grieve the friendship. You have to grieve the person. And then it's almost like, depending on how close you were with that person, it's like you kind of have to reconstruct your day without like, oh my gosh, I got to call so-and-so to tell them. And then it's just like, oh, yeah, we're not talking anymore. Or, oh yeah, that person blocked me. Or, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's tough. And I don't feel like we don't talk about that enough. Like, at all. We do not talk about it. We like to act like, all right, cool. Like, you don't fuck with me, I don't need you to fuck with me. But in the back end, yo, that shit really be rough. That should be hurting. That should be, making some thugs cry out here. Dead ass. They really, really do. But nobody will probably talk about it. And I feel like we should. And I feel like if you have an experience where you've experienced a friend if you have an experience with friendship breakups, please drop some comments below. Let me know how you dealt with it. Let me know what happened, and if you and that person reconnected, or if it's just something that you just had to live with. And until next time, cheers to a new episode.